Hello, and I've picked myself up an old Acorn Electron for not a lot of money, and the reason being, you can probably see the state of it. It's a bit grimy. So this is one of my eBay impulse purchases, and I think I paid about £25 for it in an untested condition. But hey, I plugged it in and it does work, so happy days. But I want to spend a bit of time on it and go through and clean it and get rid of all the biology experiments that seem to be growing on it. Do a full recap, and we'll take a look inside and start that now. So let's have a look inside. And I'll just quickly disconnect this cable. There we go. Well, there we have it. And it's in issue 2. Now this is the third Electron I've bought, and the previous 2 have all been issue 4s. This is the first issue 2 I've ever actually seen, so I don't know what the significance of the differences are. I don't know if they're better or worse or what, but or how rare or common they are, but well, there it is. So let's take a closer look. So this is the power board, and it needs a 19 volt AC power supply, which it then rectifies to DC, and it provides a output down here on the board 5 volts and minus 5 volts. And there's also these 2 connectors here, which I think just directly pass through from the socket, so you get 18 to 19 volts AC, and that's for any expansions that you might want to use as well. There's the ULA, uncommitted logic array. Now, on one of the Electrons I bought, when I first powered it on, because I bought it as non-working, it was giving me a load of white lines. And to fix that, all I needed to do was resocket this. So I took it out, I cleaned it, I put it back in, and it was fine. So if you do see those problems, it's worth just trying that first. So it's MOS 6502. Presumably that's the ROM. And those 4 chips down there, that's the RAM, so it's got 32 kilobytes of RAM. There's some logic. And that, I think, is the relay for the cassette. So, like the BBC Micro, this will control a cassette recorder as well. So we've got the connector ports for RGB out and cassette. Composite black and white out. And the TV modulator as well. So I think my first job would be to strip this down so I can clean the case, and then I can spend some time on the boards and recap them. Simple as that. Ugh. Yeah, I'm not sure there hasn't been something living in this. It's absolutely disgusting. Oh. Still, that'll make the cleanup more satisfying. But that is grotty. I don't know where this thing was kept. Ugh. Anyway, make a start on taking the keys off. Right, with the space bar I just need to be a little bit careful. There's actually two metal hooks under here that need to be disconnected. So, oh, and it's hard to see with all the filth in there. God. And you won't have seen it on the camera, but as I was pulling those keys off, there were little crawly things escaping out of it. So, God only knows where this thing's been kept. So that's going to need a proper clean up with some alcohol. Now, the circuit on the board can be separated. There are two screws, but in order to do that, I would have to desolder each and every single switch and stuff that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to run some IPA on the top side of the board and rinse it right through, and hopefully that'll clean it out on the underside. In the meantime, well, I've got a pile of washing to do, that in the case. So I'm going to start that now. Well, this is grim. Must have been kept in a shed or something, I don't know. Ah. Let's see what we can do with a dry brush. There are literally rodent hairs coming off that. Let's give it a soak. Let that dry for a bit and then I'll give it another go. Right, so all the parts are now cleaned, they've all had a good scrub. You won't have seen it on the camera when I initially did it, but when I started dismantling this keyboard, all these little mite things just went and ran across my desk, and I thought, oh well, that's lovely. Because this thing's been sitting in my house for a couple of weeks before I cleaned it, so, oh, that was disgusting. But anyway, I've drowned it with alcohol, so anything that was living there is either dead or just so incredibly drunk that it's not going to cause me a problem, so that's fine. Case has had a good scrub, keys have all been cleaned, and that wasn't a 5-minute job either. I really had to go at it with a toothbrush because the dirt was so disgustingly ingrained in there, it really took some scrubbing to clean up. And that was after soaking the keys for an hour as well, so I don't know where this thing's been stored. I'm just assuming it was a shed or something. That's what I choose to believe, because to get into that sort of disgusting state with living things in it as well, I would hate to think that's come out of somebody's house. So, I choose to believe it came out of a shed or something anyway. But anyway, it's done. It's clean. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the case next. It is quite yellowed. I'll just show you. In fact, it's actually really brown. I think the camera makes it look better than it is. But it's evenly brown. So I could put this back together and it wouldn't look bad. But I don't know. I'm tempted to retrobrite. I'm really not sure. Because I probably could make it look a lot better than it does. But then it doesn't look bad as it is. It just looks like what it is, which is an old computer. So I don't know. I'll have a think about it. So what I'll do next is I'll concentrate on the electrical bits. So I'll get started on those. I'm going to make a start on recapping the power board, and I'm going to start with this big bugger there. So it's a 35 volts 3300 microfarad capacitor, and I've bought a replacement. I couldn't find any axial capacitors for this, so I've bought a radial, but I'm sure I can make it fit. But if you look at it physically, there's a massive difference in size. Now, both capacitors are rated at the same voltage, the same capacitance. This has a really wide operating temperature. So electrically it should work. I just can't get over the difference in size. So hopefully I'm not missing something, but we'll see. I'll put it in, and if it blows up, then, well, presumably I'll have learnt something. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Right, so for the big capacitor, with that being an axial, and I've only bought radials because, well, I'm cheap, what I've had to do is bend the leads round. And what I've done there is I've just soldered another component leg on, just to extend it, so that hopefully I can mount this in. And because I've got quite a lot of exposed wire at the top here, I'm just going to use some of this sheathing to go over like this. And yes, this is mains electrical earthing shielding, but I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work. So if I just cut this to length, something like that. I should then be able to bend this round. There it is. A makeshift axial capacitor that should fit in. So let's solder that in. So negative there. There we go, that's installed. So I'll go ahead and I'll just whiz out the rest of the capacitors, and that should be the power board done. I'm replacing this axial capacitor with a radial one, so I've done a similar thing as before with that big capacitor. I've just bent the legs around and put a bit of insulation on, just so it'll fit in the hole. I don't know what it was when I was ordering these capacitors. Normally they have plenty of axials in stock, but not this time, and well, I can make them fit, so let's get this in. Another awkward one. So I've got my axial cap there. Replacement radial. I'm just going to do this slightly differently. So I'm just going to bend the legs, well, like that. And that should fit. I don't see that causing any problems at all. Power board done. I'll just want to test it now. Right, I've temporarily installed the power board back in the case because I just want to test the voltages. I want to do that before I plug it back into the computer main board to make sure there's no problems with anything I've just done. I'm not going to fry the computer or anything like that, so hopefully no explosions. No, it's not blown up. We're on volt DC. Let's see what we've got. So, common and positive 5 volts. Lovely. And negative 5 volts. That's absolutely fine. Might as well check the AC circuit while we're at it. Should be about 19, 18, 19. $21. Well, that's fine because it's not under any load, so I would say that was okay. Right, well, that's the power board done then. That all seems to work, so on with the main board. I'm going to recap the main board now. It does work, or it did last time I plugged it in anyway. So all I'm going to do is change the electrolytic capacitors, give it a bit of brush down, wipe with some alcohol, and it shouldn't need anything further than that. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Right, so I've been going backwards and forwards in my own head about this, whether I should retrobrite or not, and I think, stuff it, I'll do it. Let's see how good we can get this, because it was quite disgusting when I first got it, and it'd be nice to see it all crisp and white and shiny, so I think I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I'm going to slap some peroxide on, stick it in the bag, stick it under a full spectrum light, and we'll just see how it comes out after a few hours. Yep. Actually, for the keys, I think what I'm going to do is I've got another bag. I put a generous amount of peroxide in there, and then just move it around the bag. Maybe a bit more. Okay, maybe I can put the keys straight in. I've tried this before, so I don't know how effective it's going to be. Alright, see what happens. I think I'll have to rotate the keys maybe every half an hour, but the rest of it should be okay. Right. And we're cooking. Right, so the case has spent about 8 hours underneath a full spectrum light, and it's definitely gone up a few shades. Not completely white, but I don't think these things ever were, so it's more of a cream colour now. Keys have come out really nicely. So they did have a bit of a shadow on them from where they'd faded. That's now gone. So I'm quite happy with that. I think I can start putting this back together. Oh, one thing I did notice actually. Underneath the case, and if you look where the screws go in to hold the case together, it's actually got a metal threaded insert. Now, the other two Electrons I've got, the issue 4s, they don't have this. You're screwing directly into the plastic, so maybe this was just a feature on the early ones, I don't know. Maybe with the later ones, with Acorn having financial trouble, they tried to cut the costs a little bit, but yeah, that's a nice little thing. I don't see it on the later ones. So, I suppose I can start reassembling this now. I'll start with the keyboard, I think. One side. I'll start with the space bar. There's a little metal hook that needs to go in here. If I can find it. That's one side. Always space bars I have trouble with, every computer. It's always the space bar. Ah, there we go. Lovely. Right. In fact, what I will do, I think, is I'll reinstall the keyboard back into the case before I put the rest on. Normally I would take a picture before I take the keyboard apart to make sure I know where all the keys go back, but in this case I have another Electron, so I can just copy straight from there. So let's get cracking. In with the power board. And the main board. Hope you'll excuse the handheld camera work, but I thought I'd show you a couple of close-ups. So this cap there, that was a radial cap that I modified to fit, as I showed earlier, so I just soldered an extra component leg on. And quite a bit smaller than the original, but I think caps just are smaller these days. That's all been recapped. Had another radial capacitor right there that I've installed in an axial slot, and I've just bent the leads round and put some insulation underneath, as you can see there, hopefully. Right, these here are 10 microfarad 50 volts. They're the same as what came out electrically as the original, but they're another radial cap. So because they're so small, so low profile, I was able to install them this way. Again, there's a radial cap right there. Just bent the legs and put some insulation underneath. And the whole board has had a bit of a clean with some alcohol. So hopefully it should be good for another 30 years. Almost forgot the speaker. Now I can put the two halves back together. So Yep, something like that. I won't screw it down just yet, I want to make sure it actually works. So I'll do that now. Right, give it a whirl. Easy as that. Wonderful. One little quirk I have noticed with this then, and I'll just compare it to another Electron. You'll notice when I power it on, power off, back on again, listen to the beep. I get that two-tone beep like you do with a BBC Micro. However, the later issue 4, single beep. I don't know why these should be different, but they are. Well, guess I'll try and load something and make sure the cassette interface works. Now we seem to have developed a little fault. I tried loading something from a cassette and the video display that was very in and out, and now it's out. It seems to have disappeared altogether, so I'm going to try resocketing a couple of chips, mainly the ULA. It's probably not the ROM that's causing the problem, but what the hell, I'll pull it anyway and clean the contacts up and we'll see if that makes any difference. So I think I can just release these spring-loaded clips. Let's have a look. Oh yeah. Yeah. Try not to do that. Well, that went. Yeah. Welcome to the amateur channel, ladies and gentlemen. Right. Let's just give that some contact cleaner. I'll just let that dry for a bit. Right, I've given it all a bit of a clean. The contacts were a little bit corroded, so fingers crossed that was the problem. Doesn't help when I'm catapulting parts across the room either, but well, I'm a hobbyist, I'm not a professional. Not that that's any excuse for that, but there we go. Let's put this back in, and I have grounded myself. Now then. Well, let's try again. I'll put the keyboard back on and we'll fire it up and make sure it still works. Yeah, well, my picture's back anyway, so maybe that's all it was. I'll just let it run for a bit and we'll make sure there's no further problems, and I'll try loading some software again. I've resocketed the ROM and I cleaned up all the contacts for the ULA, put that back together after I catapulted it across the room anyway, and I've had a stable picture now for about half an hour, so I think that was the problem. It seems absolutely fine now, so I'll go ahead and I'll try and load some software again, and hopefully we won't have the same problem. Right, excellent. Well, that's loaded. So yeah. So two things. First of all, I think we can consider this computer fully functional now. And secondly, yeah, this game's awful. But I do have a nice steady picture. Yep, so I think... God, that's annoying. I think I'm going to wrap this up now. I'm going to go ahead and put the case screws back in, and I'll consider this a success. So from what I started with, which was quite literally infested, I think it's come out quite nice. No, I'm quite pleased with it. Yeah, it's an awful lot brighter, it's a lot cleaner, and it works beautifully. So I think I'm going to try and find a better game to play than this. But yeah, now I can enjoy it.